Welcome to Pandas Library Crash Course. In this tutorial, we want to quickly overview how Pandas Library can help us creating DataFrame. So the first thing, just like before, is importing the library itself. So I'm saying import Pandas. Usually we are using as PD, but feel free to change this. Run this. All right, our library is now imported. Let's create another cell and start creating a list and then changing that to DataFrame format. So I call this list A, for example, and let's create a list with 3 dimensions. So with 2 dimensions, sorry. So I'm saying 1 set of brackets, 2 set of brackets for the first row. So I'm saying 1, 2, 3. Let's put some numbers there. Comma, 4, 5, 6. Another sets of brackets, 7, 8, 9, for example. So I created a list with 2 dimensions, with 3 rows and 3 columns actually. So if I run this, and I can even check the A. So this is a list I created. I can check the type of that. Type, run it. You can see that we created a list with 3 rows and 3 columns. All right. Now we want to change this to DataFrame format. So you have a list, you want to change it to DataFrame format. I create another cell. I call it B, and B is equal to PD dot DataFrame. So anytime that you want to change an array or list or other types to DataFrame format, you can use the DataFrame method in the Pandas library. So this PD is actually the Pandas library that I imported, and I'm using the DataFrame format method. And inside of this, I should pass the list or array that we want to change the type of it. So I want to change A. So I pass A here and I run this. And now if I check the B itself, it should give me the B in a DataFrame format. Now it's in a DataFrame format, right? So it was in a list format. Now it's in a DataFrame format. Now I want to add column names. I don't want the column names to be 0. By default, if you don't define the column names or index names, it actually puts numbering there, 0, 1, 2, and so on for both columns and index. But we can change this. So first, let's start with columns. I want to change the columns and put some names for them. Let's say columns. And I put them in a list as a string. So let's call the first column column 1. Let's call the second column column 2. Call the third column column 3. All right. So if I run this right now, it should actually change the column name to column 1, column 2, and column 3. What about the indices? So I can change the index name, or let's say the row names as well, by simply defining the index here. So I'm putting comma, index is equal to, and just like what we did for the columns, I create a list here, list of the names, and then put them in quotation for creating a string. So let's say example 1, for example, example 2, and example 3. Run this again. You can see that our indices also changed. So we changed the column name, we changed the index name, and now we have let's not call it perfect, but it's in a good shape data frame. All right. But the most important part here is understanding how we can deal with the slicing and filtering the data from our data frame. And that's very important. So let's go to the next cell. And let's say, for example, you want to filter out some numeric values. To do that, we can use the iloc method in Pandas library. So let's say, for example, b dot iloc. Inside of the brackets, you need to first deal with the number of rows that you want to filter, then comma, number of columns that you want to filter. So let's put a comma. On the left hand side, I need to define the rows. Let's say we want all the rows. Put colon, it means that I want all the rows. Go to the right hand side of the comma, and then let's say, for example, we want only column 1 and column 2. So this is 0, this is 1, and when you in Python, when you say 0, 1, 2, it doesn't consider 2 anymore. So let's say 2, 2, 0 to 2. So this means that I want 0, I want 1, but I don't want 2. So if I run this, it will actually remove column 3. Run it. See, we have all the rows. We don't have the last column anymore. So this iloc method is actually a very useful method for slicing and filtering the data from our data frame. Let's do something else. For example, let's say this time you want to filter out the first and second row, and you don't want the last row. So to do that, I'm saying b.iloc again inside of the brackets. So first we need to deal with the rows. We want 0 until 2. So it means that I want 0, I want 1, but I don't want 2. So it doesn't consider number 2, comma, and I want all the columns. Let's put all the columns, run it. You can see that we only have first and second rows, and we have all the columns. All right. You can also filter based on row and column label, but not with iloc method. Let's first do that with iloc method to see what happens. So if I say, for example, in this B data frame, I want example 2, this row, and column 3, this column. So I want number 6, right? Example 2, column 3. So it would be number 6. If I say b.iloc and I use the label and I say ex2 in a row part, so let's just put it in a string as a string format, ex2 and comma column 3, right? ex2 column 3, and if I run this right now, it will give me an error, and the error is actually indicating that you cannot use iloc and pass the labels on it. Iloc needs the value, or the value of the index, actually the number of the index, not still the label itself. If you want to use the label and you insist on using that, you can simply remove the I and use loc method. So we have two types of methods in Pandas, loc and iloc. So iloc is when we are dealing with the index number, and loc is when we are dealing with the label itself. So if I run this right now, it will give me number 6 without any error, and that's correct. Example 2, column 3, it's number 6. All right. There are also several methods which we can call and use in our on our created data frame. Let's review some of the important ones. We don't want to go through all of them. So let me create another cell, and let's first write down our data frame that we created, b data frame, this data frame, and we want to call some methods on it. So if I press dots, it will automatically, most of the time in each ID that you are using, open up and suggest some of all of the actually methods that you can use on this data frame that you have here. These are all of the methods that you can use. Feel free to go through them. But for example, in this tutorial, let's use some of them. Let's say I want to use replace methods. Let's find it here. So this is replace, click on it. So b.replace. And I want to replace, let's say 9 here in my data frame, 9 with 100. So I can simply pass the first value that is actually inside of your data frame. And the second value is the value that you want the first value to be replaced with. So 100. If I run it again, you can see that 100 is replaced, 9 is replaced with 100. All right. What if you want to do several replacements? For example, let's say I want to replace 5 with 20, and also I want to replace 7 with 30, both of them with together. So to do that, we can use dictionary. So I can say b dot replace, and inside the parentheses, I put a dictionary, and inside the dictionary, I define both of them. So 5 with 20, comma, and I want to replace 7 with 30. Run it. See? 5 changed to 20, 7 changed to 30. All right. So let's use another method. One of the other methods that is very famous in Pandas library is a drop method. So let's use that. So let's say b.drop, and drop method is used actually when you want to drop a column or row. For example, let's say you want to drop the whole column here, column 1, in our B data frame, and you can simply pass the column name inside of the drop. So for example, let's say column 1, all right? We want to drop this, we want to remove this completely. So I'm passing the column name inside of the drop method, run it, and this error is mentioning that column 1 is not in the axis. What is the problem? So when you are using the drop method, you need to define another parameter inside of the parentheses. You don't have it's not enough to just pass the column name or row name. You need to define the axis as well. What axis means, it means that the drop method should search through the columns or should search through the rows. So here we can simply put, oops, I remove the column name as well. Column 1, let's keep this, go outside of this, put comma, and then put axis equal to. So if you just if you get a help from this drop method, you can see that here. If you go down, you can see that axis 0 or index, 1 or columns, and the default is 0. So it means that if you define this 0, it goes through the rows and to find the column 1. If we define it as 1, it goes through the columns to find the column 1. So we want the column 1 is actually through the columns, so we need to define the axis 1. The reason that it gives us error the previous time, it was because the default axis is 0, so it went through the axis 0 which was rows. It went through the rows and it couldn't find column 1 between them. That was why it gives us column 1 not found in axis 0. And if we define that, okay, axis is not 0, go to the axis column axis to find column 1 and run this again, you can see that it simply removed the related column that we asked, column 1, and now we have our new data frame. And each time you can simply save the results of this into another variable. So for example, I want to save this in another variable named C, and I can check the C later for myself like this. Same results. All right, so that was it. Just feel free to go through other methods to play around with the Pandas data frame methods. But I hope this tutorial helped you to understand the basics of the Pandas data frame better. Until the next tutorial, keep exercising.